Hello, today we're going to talk about how to use cycle tracking when trying to conceive naturally. When you think about getting pregnant and trying to conceive, does it look a little something like this? You're super nonchalant and carefree. You have sex a few random times in a month when you're feeling fun and in the mood. You take a pregnancy test a few days or a few weeks later, and voila, 2 pink lines. Excited, teary-eyed, and maybe a little nervous. And you and your partner are overjoyed as you begin dreaming of your growing family. While this was the case for me and most of my clients, this is not the case for so many couples when trying to conceive. While there are a large number of reasons why folks struggle when trying to get pregnant, at the foundation for nearly everyone is that we're not ever taught how to actually get pregnant, only how not to get pregnant. And that's where I come in. My name is Brandy Oswald, and I am a fertility awareness educator, menstrual cycle expert, and the founder of Sauvage Wellness. I teach women around the world how to get pregnant easily when they're ready by tracking their natural fertility signs, nourishing their menstrual cycles, and knowing when they can and can't get pregnant each month. The truth is that it's not always as easy as just having sex whenever we want, peeing on some ovulation strips, using fertility apps and rings, or even tracking our temperature. And that's because we can only get pregnant from intercourse on about 6 days of any given menstrual cycle. So getting those days right is crucial to pregnancy achievement. That window of time is called our fertile window. The fertile window includes the 5 days leading up to ovulation and the 24 hours after. This is because sperm can live inside the menstruating human's body for up to 5 days in optimal cervical fluid. That means it can wait around after sex for up to 5 days in hopes of being there lingering when ovulation occurs. The egg, once released during ovulation, however, is only viable for 12 to 24 hours. Rarely we may release 2 eggs per cycle. They're always within the same fertile window and, in fact, within the same 24 to 48 hours. This is the case with fraternal twins. This means that the 5-day lifespan of sperm plus a 24-hour lifespan of the egg gives us a 6-day window during which pregnancy can take place. Before or after that window, it is biologically impossible to get pregnant. Ovulation strips, temperature tracking, and fertility apps and devices attempt to help us locate our fertile windows in any given cycle. However, they can be inaccurate at doing so for a variety of reasons. Let's take a look. We'll start with ovulation strips. Ovulation strips test for luteinizing hormone, or LH, which spikes just before ovulation. Using only ovulation test strips to determine one's fertile window isn't always accurate because we can get multiple elevated LH readings in one menstrual cycle. This means that someone might concentrate pregnancy achievement attempts with an earlier rise in LH and discontinue using the strips for the remainder of the cycle, only to have a larger LH spike that correlates with ovulation later on in that same cycle. This would mean that their previous pregnancy achievement attempts could be too early or too far away from ovulation to lead to conception. And another tricky thing with ovulation strips is that we have to have sex ASAP once we start getting elevated readings, which can catch us off guard and leave us rushing to get it in, right? If we're not prepared. I also don't love relying on temperature tracking only when trying to conceive. Tracking basal body temperature, or our temperature first thing in the morning, has become extremely popular as a strategy for determining one's fertile window. However, when used on its own, temperature tracking might be the most useless tool for trying to conceive. This is because temperature spikes after we have already ovulated. And as we discussed above, most of our fertile window is in fact before we ovulate. By the time we register a temperature rise in the cycle, we're very likely too far past ovulation for conception to occur. Temperature tracking is used to determine the close of the fertile window, which is not helpful if we're trying to have sex and get pregnant during that fertile window. In addition, any thermometers or temperature tracking apps that determine the opening of one's fertile window are doing so using past cycle data, not a real-time temperature tracking. This means that they are guessing or predicting when your fertile window will be in your current cycle based on when it was in your previous cycles. And this isn't very accurate because we're not robots. We don't always ovulate at the same time in every cycle. Very simple things like getting sick, traveling, and stress can all change when we ovulate in any given menstrual cycle. Next up, I also don't like relying on cycle tracking apps or fertility devices when trying to conceive either. Cycle tracking apps and fertility devices have skyrocketed in popularity in recent years for folks who are trying to conceive. While they can be better than just blindly trying to get pregnant, they too have similar faults to temperature-only tracking. Nearly all of these apps and devices attempt to determine the opening of one's fertile window using past cycle data, which, as we know, is a flawed way to do so. While they allow you to enter and save data other than just temperature, they really use that information when determining the opening of and closing of the fertile window. In essence, they're just really fancy notebooks filled with our cycle data, which brings me to my next qualm with the devices, and that's privacy. Many of these apps and devices have come under fire in recent years for their poor protection of our intimate health data. If you wouldn't want your medical charts from your doctor's office floating around the internet, you shouldn't want your detailed menstrual cycle and fertility health data doing so either. And that's what these apps and devices can put us at risk of. So by now, you might be wondering, what the heck are we supposed to do then to help us try and conceive naturally? And that's where fertility awareness methods come in. Fertility awareness methods, or FAMs, are 100% natural, specialized cycle tracking methods of pregnancy achievement that work by observing our naturally occurring fertility signs and symptoms. Signs and symptoms that tell us where we are in our menstrual cycles and whether or not we can get pregnant on any given day. There are a variety of fertility awareness methods to choose from. As a professional fertility awareness educator and menstrual cycle educator, I use and teach the symptothermal double check method. The symptothermal double check method of fertility awareness requires users to track both daily cervical fluid secretions and daily morning temperature, as well as optional cervix tracking and more. This is so effective because cervical fluid secretions and changes in cervix position and texture can actually tell us that our body's trying to ovulate before it happens, which means they can help us accurately open the fertile window and catch those days where we are fertile leading up to ovulation. Cervical fluid is simply what you see and feel on your underwear and on toilet paper when going to the bathroom and moving throughout your day. Depending on what fluid looks like, it tells us whether we're about to ovulate, whether we're nearing our periods, or somewhere in between. Rising estrogen levels as the body gears up for ovulation leads to the creation of very specific and noticeable changes in cervical fluid, what we call fertile type fluids. Because cervical fluid can tell us when our bodies are gearing up for ovulation, we can use that information to prioritize intercourse on those fertile days leading up to ovulation itself. So how does the symptothermal double check method know exactly when our fertile window is? Well, there are 4 specific rules that must be applied when using the symptothermal double check method to open and close the fertile window. 2 rules to open and 2 rules to close. The rules to open the fertile window are based on real-time cervical fluid observations and cycle length. The rules to close the fertile window are based on real-time cervical fluid observances and daily temperature tracking. I teach my clients how to use all 4 of these rules in my Cycle Wisdom course. A question I get a lot is, but does it actually work? And my son is living proof that it does. When my husband and I were trying to conceive, I got pregnant on the very first try using this method. What's even better is that the symptothermal double check method allows us to see where potential hormonal imbalances might exist in our cycles so that we can spot them, get the support we need so that they do not hinder our fertility and our ability to get pregnant. Several years prior to trying to conceive, I noticed a concerning shift in my cervical fluid production and temperature readings right on my cycle tracking charts. that pointed to having too much estrogen and not enough progesterone, which could have kept me from getting pregnant had I not spotted it and made changes to my diet and lifestyle before trying to conceive. And it's not just me. So many of my clients have also gotten pregnant quickly and easily using this method, some even after years of trying, which I'll include in the caption below a link to a blog post that I put together where a lot of these clients share their personal stories of success with this method. So if you've been following along at this point and you're feeling really fired up, like I need to learn more, you're not alone. That's why I created my free 5-day cycle tracking mini course. If you choose to join me in the mini course over the next 5 days, I will teach you exactly how hormonal birth control changes our brain and the surprising ways that the pill, patch, shot, ring, and IUDs impact our bodies and our fertility. I'll teach you why cycle tracking apps, rings, the Apple Watch, and even devices like Natural Cycles are not the most effective when trying to conceive. I'll also teach you how to get started cycle tracking the right way using cervical fluid and basal body temperature. And I'll teach you how to use the cycle tracking information to get pregnant naturally and to wait for it, have better, more resilient menstrual cycles down the road. So if you're interested, in the caption below, I'll share a link where you can check out, learn more, and sign up for my free 5-day cycle tracking mini course to take all of this content so much deeper over the next 5 days. Thank you so much for joining me. I can't wait to see you again here at Sauvage Wellness.